Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Keep America Beautiful Zero Waste Communities webinar series. Today, our session will focus on the transformative corporate initiatives for a waste-free world. Before we get started, I'd like to go through a couple housekeeping notes. If you have any technical problems during the webinar, you can call our GoToWebinar customer support line at 877-582-7011. That is 877-582-7011. Because of the size of the audience, we will be keeping the session in listen-only mode. If you have to disconnect from the webinar and want to listen only, you can do so by calling 914-614-3221. This presentation will be recorded for later viewing. At this point, all lines are muted, but you are encouraged to participate and submit questions to us at any time using the question panel on the right side of your screen. Simply click the plus sign next to the word question, type in your question and send it. If you don't see the question box on your control panel, try clicking it on the tools menu on the top of the panel and check the question selection. We'll be moderating the questions along the way, seeking themes to be asked and addressed at the end of the discussion. Please feel free to use the chat function as a placeholder for your important questions, and we'll do our best to get to all of them. Now let me turn things over to our host of today's session, Dr. Jennifer Griffin. I think Jennifer may be having some technical difficulties. In the meantime, let's introduce our panelists. We'll start off with Meredith.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Meredith Lindvall. I'm the Director of Waste and Recycling at Cox Enterprises. Cox Enterprises has over 50,000 employees. We are over a $20 billion business, and our major business lines are Cox Communications and Cox Automotive, and some of the brands that you might be familiar with underneath those include Kelley Blue Book, Auto Trader, and Cox Home Life.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Tran. I am the Director of Sustainability and Responsibility for Pernod Ricard. Many people may not be familiar with Pernod Ricard, but I think many people may be familiar with some of our consumer brands, including Absolut, Jameson, and Malibu. We are an organization of over 19,000 employees, ranging in numerous countries, with a net revenue of 8 billion euros per year. Very nice to meet you all.
And my name is Tony Rossi. I'm the head of business development for Terracycle globally. Terracycle is a privately owned, mission-driven company. The reason we exist is to eliminate the idea of waste. And today, our three main pillars of our business are making things that are not recyclable, making products and packaging from recycled material, and our newest line of business is Loop, where we're looking to attack disposability at its core and usher in a platform for reusability. Terracycle is almost 20 years old now. We operate in 22 countries around the world, and in 2020 we also launched our non-for-profit foundation, the global Terracycle Global Foundation, which today operates in Thailand and will soon expand to India as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for giving those brief interviews. While we're working to get Jennifer back online, I will dive in with the first question. Can you tell us a bit about your company's zero waste story? We've been a recycler, manufacturer in a self-service-based business. What are you doing? What and why bother? Let's start off with you, Meredith.
Sure. So first off, environmental sustainability is core to Cox's belief and our culture. We really believe in being a force for global good in the world and helping to tackle the most pressing problems of our time. Our planet is in crisis, but when companies, governments, and communities work together, we can build a brighter future. But not only is this a huge environmental benefit to our employees, customers, and the communities where Cox does business, we believe that we can also serve as an example for other companies on how to follow this path. And the way that we are aggressively tackling this challenge head on is our first goal for sustainability, which is to achieve zero waste to landfill by 2024. And for those that are paying attention, that's coming up here pretty soon. It's 2021. And we've been tackling this goal since 2013. And since then, we've been laser focused on really launching recycling, educating our employees, and making sure that everywhere across the Cox business, everyone has access to recycling programs to work towards our zero waste to landfill efforts. But this is pretty challenging for us, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later because we are one of the only non-manufacturing companies to have a zero waste to landfill goal. So a big part of this for us is setting the precedent and defining what zero waste to landfill looks like for a service-based company. And the way that we define zero waste to landfill at Cox is first we want to reduce, reuse, recycle everything that we can within our four walls, and then partner to create meaningful offsets that drive zero waste infrastructure in the communities where Cox employees live and work, and also focus on recycling solutions for materials that are of high priority for Cox. A little bit about what this looks like. We have over 350 domestic locations where we have launched zero waste to landfill programs, and we have reached all 50,000 of our employees, educating them in zero waste to landfill practices, as well as looked upstream to our suppliers to think about waste as an opportunity. And I have to say that in just a few short years, we have been very successful. We started our journey in 2013 at a 9% diversion rate and closed out 2020 with an over 75% diversion rate nationwide. And a big part of our success has been our zero waste to landfill education and engagement strategy with our employees, where we encourage them to make better informed decisions about zero waste to landfill habits from their work and translate that out into their communities and homes. But we know that this is really helping grow the zero waste infrastructure that Cox needs to be successful. As you all know, it's really a two-way street. What you learn at work, you can also translate back to your home and vice versa. So this two-way street, though, lately, it has gotten a lot shorter. At least I know my commute has. And so one of the things I wanted to touch on is that the shift from working from home has really combined where Cox employees live and work together. And so while we've always had a part of our strategy to work with communities and translate what Cox has learned, this shift to digital environments in 2020 due to COVID really accelerated that focus. And so we struck while the iron was hot, and we had executive buy-in to accelerate that focus to turning our gaze outward, translating what Cox has learned in our own zero waste journey and sharing that with others in our home and business communities. And for me, driving scale at that change is the real goal.
That is such an amazing story for Cox, and I actually do not know how I am going to follow that. But you know, at Pernod Ricard, one of the things that we really believe in our sustainability story is good times from a good place. We really believe that we are creators of conviviality, and there can be no conviviality in excess. And so what we really want to do is we believe that we share a world in finite resources, and it's under huge pressure right now. So, you know, what does that actually mean? That means that we're really committed to minimizing waste at every step of our operations, anywhere from the agriculture that we produce all the way to the distribution of our products. As a global organization, we produce over 1 billion bottles, packaging, and promotional items. So our footprint is huge, and we need to make sure that we're minimizing waste along the way. This is really in order to optimize and preserve the natural resources that we have. And so we've really focused on 4 key priorities. The first being in 2021, we are going to remove all single plastic items when it comes to our promotional items. So, you know, as part of that 1 billion unit footprint, all of the items that we produce in terms of promotional will be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. By the time we reach 2025, all of our bottling, which is a huge footprint, our glass bottling, as well as our corrugate packaging will also be recyclable, compostable, or reusable. But the biggest thing that we're really excited for is our 2030 goal. And that's really about circular distribution of our wine and spirits. So right now, what we are looking to do is reduce our waste in terms of the overall distribution cycle of our products. So the ultimate goal of this will be to be able to take the packaging and our goods and be able to actually reuse them back into our cycle. We're super excited about this, and between then and now, we hope to at least pilot 10 different projects across our largest markets, including the US. So we're super excited for that. And there's a lot more on the way, and we'll be piloting very soon.
Thank you, John. Tony?
Yeah, that's now I have to follow you, John. Real domino effect here. I think for Terracycle, who we are, we're a recycler, but really at our core, we're a company that exists to tackle waste. And if you think about our history, and you know, we're only 20 years old, but for a company who's been operating in this space, only 20 years is actually a pretty long time. Right from the beginning, our mission was waste, and we started by collecting and repurposing all of the food waste at Princeton. Right, our founder and CEO was there in his first year. He's quite the entrepreneurial soul, and where others saw waste, he saw an opportunity. And what he did with that food waste was get into vermicomposting. Right, he was feeding that food waste to worms. He was creating a wonderful product, an organic fertilizer, and eventually he managed to get contracts with folks like Home Depot and Walmart, and had to bottle what he was producing. And packaging is expensive for a startup who's 19 or 20 years old, and we got into reuse quite organically. And what we found was that if you took a soda bottle out of the blue bin and you could screw on something like a Windex trigger, it was a perfect fit. And that was our first product. And from there, we really organically grew. It was like, okay, well, we're tackling food waste, we're tackling already recyclable packaging. What's next? What about all this flexible film? What can we do with that? And our solution was, again, looking at something that was waste and trying to provide a new solution for that. And we became an upcycling company, right? Making backpacks from Capri Sun juice pouches, making dog toys from Pedigree packaging. And what happened is, organically, as our company grew, we were just collecting too much waste. We had too much flexible packaging that was coming in, and while backpacks are fun, it's not a viable and sustainable, from a business perspective, solution to that waste. And from there, we almost, again, organically morphed into a recycling company. And from flexible waste, we diversified into, you know, complex closures and triggers, looking at, you know, other flexible packaging and products, coffee capsules. And then we said, how do we keep pushing the boundaries even more and look at things like used cigarette butts, chewing gum, dirty diapers, and now through COVID, personal protective equipment. So, and even building on that, we started to collect and recycle a lot of waste. And the question became, what do we do with it? And while we have very good supply chains with plastic manufacturers who gladly take our recycled material, alleviating the need to use virgin material, we thought there was an opportunity to work with our partners to create something purposeful, to tell the story of Terracycle and what our brand partners are doing. So we started to make playgrounds from, you know, the Colgate toothpaste tubes and toothbrushes that we collected, and showed people that you can make a difference in your community, and what you collect can be turned into something good. And then we started to put it back into our partners' packaging. All the while, our company was growing, expanding to 22 countries around the world, working with different types of manufacturers, whether that be, you know, a large company like a Pernod Ricard or a Unilever or a P&G, but also, you know, wonderful national and independent companies like D'Addario here in the United States, who's one of the world's largest strings manufacturer for instruments. But like I was saying, in our soul, we always knew that recycling is a band-aid on a very deep cut. We're trying to stop the bleeding of waste as best we can. But can we look 20, 30, 50 years into the future and still be living in a take, make, dispose society? And we argued no. And that's where Loop was born. And we kind of went full circle and back to our beginnings and tried to resurrect and modernize reusability again. And that is a platform that's expanding around the world. It's been up for a couple of years. We've had a lot of learnings. And again, we really see that being one solution in terms of solving for the very issue of waste. Because if there's something that we as a company have learned in 20 years is that there is no silver bullet. There's no one answer that's going to get us out of the problem that we've created. So that's what our company does. And I think to the question of why bother, why do that? I think it's our very reason for existing. Without that, we don't have a company. But I think what's also important is while we are a recycler, while we are a cleaning company in Loop, we also are a service provider. We're here to serve people who can't find a solution for their waste, right? When we work with all of our partners on the brand side, you know, I'm sure John specifically can relate, like it's not always easy to find a recyclable packaging for my product. So for companies who don't have that option, we want to at least be that option for them. And then none of this happens without the user, whether it be the consumer, whether it be working with people in their offices, whether it's working with groups like Keep It America Beautiful. We need to provide options to consumers to make sure that what we're providing is being utilized. And it all relates to the diversion of waste.
And if I could just add to that, Tony, you know, one of the things we see is, you mentioned brand side. This is an opportunity for brands to kind of redefine that, you know, what that brand look is. And so, you know, we always see these things as opportunities and, you know, not challenges to us. And so it's just something that's exactly what it is, an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I love these
couldn't
stories.
agree more.
I love these stories and these different narratives. This is, excuse me, your erstwhile moderator, Jenn Griffin. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for jumping in. But I had some technical difficulties. It is 2021 with internet service going down here in Chicago for whatever reason. But I love these stories because it's at the foundation of the business of why do you do what you do and how you do. And it's that triplet of why, what, how that is so important to ingrain it within the business itself. But as Tony was talking about right there, as well as with John and Meredith earlier, it is in part an opportunity that you've got brand equity, you've got brand promise, but you've also got owners or investors. Pernod Ricard is a publicly traded company. Meredith, Cox, as well as Terracycle is privately held. So you've got owners. So you've got the brand promise, you've got the owners, you've got employees to hire, attract, retain, and you've got community members. So you've got multiple stakeholders. So how is it that you manage as a business, both that top line with revenues and prosperity, as well as that commitment to zero waste communities? How do you make that happen? If we go in reverse order, why don't we start with John with Pernod Ricard?
Sure. Thank you, Jen. And I'm really glad you mentioned that word prosperity, because that's kind of really the cultural shift that we're going through right now. You know, we're kind of at a moment where we can actually redefine our value proposition. And it's really about linked and shared prosperity, this idea that we can actually succeed together, you know, in partnership with society. And so, you know, there's two phrases I really want to kind of talk about. The first being intersectional environmentalism, you know, the idea that the decisions we make as an organization, as a business, as partners in government, that actually impacts society. And there is this intersectionality between the decisions that we make for the environment and how it creates an impact for that socially. And so we want to make sure that we are thinking critically and holistically when it comes to that overall approach. But the second concept I really want to talk about, which we're kind of dubbing ourselves, is this idea of return on responsibility. So the idea that we're not just centering on that return on investment, but we're actually centering on the idea that we have a responsibility to this intersectional environmentalism. And so we say it's not just about ROI, it's actually ROR and ROI. So they should be kind of thought of in parallel. But I think the one difference in that is that we are actually centering on responsibility, the idea that we can actually focus on that as well as the investment return. And so when we think about kind of community-based initiatives and things like that, we are redefining that value proposition. It's not just about what we get in return, it's also about what we give back. So it kind of lends itself, gives us an opportunity to say, yes, at the end of the day, we are a for-profit business. Like, I get that. I don't want to be disingenuous and inauthentic on that. But at the same time, we aren't willing to give up our values. I have this conversation quite often with our CEO. She says, we will be the #1 wine and spirits organization in the world, but we will not do it if it means giving up our values. And so I kind of take that with us and say that, yes, we have tons of stakeholders, but the only way to really kind of look at shared prosperity, if we do a full stakeholder, a more capitalistic approach to stakeholder activism. Not just kind of the shareholders, which are critically important to us, but also looking at the total value chain. So, we are continuing to work with our suppliers, continuing to work with our brand teams, as well as our distributor partners and the consumers and the retailers. But at the end of the day, if we're not getting that return on responsibility, we really need to reconsider what that means to us as a business and the legacy that we leave. So, that's kind of the mentality that we're setting in terms of the culture that we want to see. I will say it is not easy. It is a difficult conversation to have with every single business person. But I do think the zeitgeist of the moment is shifting in that direction. And so we're really excited as kind of the next generation of consumers and the next generation of really environmental activists come online and really help us redefine that value proposition.
Thank you. Tony?
Yeah, for us, we are, a common misconception is that we are a non-for-profit at Terracycle, but we are a privately held for-profit business, and we're operating in a challenging space. Waste management is under a lot of pressure when it comes to recycling, and what's most profitable is landfill. And as a company, we don't do that, right? We only recycle. And what we recycle are products and packaging that have a negative economic value associated with them. And what I mean by that is, again, if we're picking on flexible plastics here, but it really could be anything you would throw in the garbage. If it costs Terracycle $1 a pound to collect, to aggregate, to sort, to process that waste, if it costs us $1 a pound, we're left with a raw material that's maybe worth 25 cents. So if there's any economists or accountants on the line, they would agree that that's a really bad business model for a for-profit business. So when it comes to responsibility and profits, we're dependent on our partners, right? We need our brand partners to cover that gap and unlock the recyclability of their products. So what does that mean? For me, responsibility is there for our clients. We have to make sure, as kind of John hinted at earlier, that the reason and the why that they're partnering with Terracycle adds value to their brand. It's part of their mission. It aligns with their goals. And as a company, Terracycle from day one has invested tremendously in making sure that our partners find value in their Terracycle programs. You know, and even during COVID, if we look at our global renewal rates for our partners, it was over 97% last year. So that's something that's really important to us, and that's responsible business for us. When it comes to profit, you know, from day one, we've been a triple bottom line business, right? It's been about people, it's been about planet, it's been about profit. But we're not looking to grow our profit. We want to invest that profit back into the business, whether it's hiring or expanding our services to be able to fuel our mission of eliminating more waste. I think last year we added over 150 jobs globally. And as a company that's flirting with the 450 employee number, that's quite a big percentage during a global pandemic. And also giving back to our participants who make our partnerships available. Like, we've given back over $10 million to schools and charities since our inception. We want to incentivize people for partnering with us. So for us, that's where a lot of our profit goes back, once we make sure that we're being good corporate stakeholders to our partners and keep them, their programs running, and keep them available to consumers.
Thank you, Tony. Common theme here of consumers and clients and partnering. Meredith.
Sure. So things for Cox are a little bit different in the service-based business, but what I think we all have in common is really looking at financial and business decisions for the long view. It's a very holistic and long-term view, and Cox was founded in the late 1800s. So I would say in general, we are well accustomed to taking this holistic long view of what is the financial return, what is the social return, and how do those things together make our business sustainable. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on that we hear about sometimes is, well, is this really a drag on the business from what the business does? And I want to say, as a service business, that's similar to when service businesses operate using Lean or Six Sigma. When a service-based company uses zero waste or mindful materials management practices and it's integrated into the daily function of your company, it's not a drain on what the business does, because it is what the business really does. We encourage all of our employees to think about every single thing that they touch as an opportunity. And so it really is about thinking about integrating that. So again, there are costs, and I want to be transparent when we start tackling some of these really difficult materials, because Cox is a lot more like some of the materials that maybe a municipality might tackle, since we're not in manufacturing and we're not a recycler. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we have a myriad of things, but it's really core to how we run our operations. Every step point along the way, there's a mindfulness about, is this waste and is it out of place? And can we optimize this process for savings, but also optimize this process for sustainability? And so a win-win I wanted to share for that one, for those that do have Cox Communications as a service provider, and bring it a little bit closer to home, is since COVID, all cable, internet, telecom installs are remote. So everything is now shipped to your house. And so that is something where we actually took a look at this box. It was a lovely, shiny white box, and lots of them went out to millions of customers around the United States. And we actually took a look at that and said, you know what, I think there's actually a triple bottom line way to do this. And so we've transitioned to, that box is now 100% recyclable. We've switched from the plastic inserts to a moldable pulp tray. We've eliminated that handle on the top. And so there's a lot of environmental benefits with that. But one of the neat things that makes Cox address this as our why and our purpose is the estimated annual savings on that is almost $1.5 million a year. So we can make changes, we can eliminate waste, we can work with recyclers, but really just every part of our process is an opportunity for us to think about waste as an opportunity and really look at that towards a triple bottom line to ensure that we're here for the next 200 years.
All right, so some common themes that I'm hearing that comes through, even though there's a recycler, there's a service provider, and a manufacturer here, is that look for the opportunities, look for the investment opportunities, and how does this drive growth? Yes, it could be viewed as an expense, but what's the investment for tomorrow? And can you look more holistically at some of the issues and opportunities that are there? But building on that long term and taking products of tomorrow and delivering them today, or services of tomorrow and delivering them today. Can you expand a little bit more about the loop, Tony, or what you're talking about, the repackaging, Meredith, or some of the neat things that are going on in Pinot Ricard, John? What are some of the innovations that are coming from this, not necessarily new way for you thinking, but for really focusing on zero waste and zero waste in many different communities? Who wants to start? John, you want to start?
Sure, I can start. So I'm super excited about an upcoming innovation that I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's coming out in like 3 weeks anyway. But we one of our brands in New York. So we are our U.S. headquarters is based in New York City, and we actually opened up the first distillery in Manhattan since Prohibition. So that is located, I believe, at 26th Street downtown, and it's called Our Vodka New York, and we are super excited about this new innovation because it's not really about the product itself. It's actually about the process of the product. So Our Vodka New York, obviously, they make a vodka, and so what they do is they actually partner with an organization called Rethink Food. Now, what Rethink does is actually they take excess food in bars and restaurants and collect it and repurpose those into new meals for those in need. And so one of the opportunities that we saw is the Rethink Food team. They have a lot of herbs and mints and basil. That has a finite shelf life, and so what we wanted to do is say, hey, we know you can only eat so much basil. And so we will be willing to kind of take that from you. So rather than you throwing it out, we will take it and we will actually repurpose it. And so what we're doing is we're actually repurposing a repurposed ingredient, and we're infusing it to create a new innovation. And what really makes me excited about this is actually not that we're upcycling an ingredient, which I think is really cool, but it's really redefining the kind of social contract between business and nonprofit. And so as we create this innovation coming out in a few weeks, the proceeds will go to Rethink Food. And it's really just kind of changing the relationship that we have, that we are sourcing ingredients from a nonprofit organization who will then in turn be supplied with a revenue stream. And so this is one of the really cool innovations that we're excited for, that actually takes into account that, again, that idea of intersectional environmentalism, and the idea that we can actually do good within the environment, but also kind of take a more holistic look at our communities. And so that's the one I'm really excited about right now. It is a pilot, and I will say the one thing culturally speaking that I want to normalize is the idea of failure. So we don't know if it's going to be a success or not, but we're willing to learn from it. Hopefully it is, but if it's not, this is not a true failure at all.
And these ideas of experimenting and that organic growth, and let's give it a whirl and use it for scale. Tony, do you have some stories to share?
Yeah, I've got a few, but I definitely can relate to failure, and that trying isn't a failure. I think innovation in this space is so important, and not everything's going to work. So I love that a lot. From our end, the obvious innovation that we've been working on the last couple of years has been Loop. It's been probably our most ambitious attempt as a company to solve for the issue of waste. So Loop, just as a reminder, as I talked about earlier, is a platform for reusability, right? Loop is working with brands, and the brands play a really important role in Loop, where we want them to continue to make the products that consumers want to buy and love. The only difference in Loop is we're asking them to completely change how they do that and pack it in a package that is durable and reusable in the platform. The second key stakeholder in Loop, and talking about kind of learning and failure, is the retailer. When we first launched Loop, it was as an e-commerce subscription-based platform where Loop was going to be the retailer. But we learned very, very early on that we are not a retailer. So Loop is partnering with, Carrefour in France and Tesco in the UK, and Walgreens and Kroger here in the US, Loblaws in Canada, and we want them to do what they do best: sell these products that our partners are creating to the consumer, right? That's what they've been doing for a very long time, and they're exceptionally good at that. And we actually launched our first iteration of that in France late last year. So if you go to 20 stores in the Carrefour stores in the Paris region in France, there is a Loop section in the store. And almost like organic, maybe 2 decades ago, organic products maybe held a very small section of the grocery store aisle for various different products. Now you see that in Loop. So consumers are able to access those products. And here in the United States, we're going to bring that to Kroger in Portland later this year, and in Manhattan with I think it's almost 100 stores at Walgreens, which is really cool. And then that leaves Loop. And where's our innovation, right? Since the beginning of time, I've told you we've been a recycler. And now we're a cleaning company, right? And that was new for us. We've hired a very good team to help build this technology to be able to clean and sanitize this packaging that comes back to Loop according to our brand partners, incredibly stringent quality control and quality assurance standards, so that we can send that packaging back to them to be refilled and re-enter the platform. So that's been a huge undertaking. And when it comes to innovation, what's unique about this one is we are not saying that we invented reusability. It's dusting off and modernizing the way things used to be. But when it comes to innovation, we're asking our partners to change the way that they've been doing business for the last 50 years, right? And they've been exceptionally good at managing profits and making their supply chain very, very efficient. And now we're asking them to change that. And that's not easy. And I'm sure we'll talk about challenges soon. So that's one innovation that I'm really excited about. There are kinks, we're learning, but every year we continue to grow. And that's very, very encouraging. And then the other innovation, I'll be quick. The other innovation is around kind of what we call using recycled content. In 2016, we launched the ocean plastic bottle with Head and Shoulders, and we've expanded that throughout various SKUs within Procter & Gamble's family. We worked with Unilever and Ren to integrate ocean plastics. Again, early this year, we launched with Pilot, making a pen out of ocean plastics. And now we're going to be adding new stories. It's not just about cleaning up the oceans. And to John and Meredith's point earlier, we're trying to look for value where others see waste. So how can we, as Terracycle, try and recapture a lot of the material that has been extracted from the environment, refined, and now sits somewhere as litter? How do we capture that, bring it back, put it into a format that our manufacturing partners can use, and create new products and packaging that have a really great story behind it? So those are two innovations that I'm looking forward to, and you'll see more this year and next.
Okay, I think our KB community affiliates might be quite keen to learn more about that, but stay tuned for that. Meredith, quickly, and then we'll go to
I'll be really quick, and John and Tony have some really exciting ones, and where Cox really sees our role is we have some unique materials for the service-based industry, so it might not be something that you think about buying off the shelf, but one thing you might not know about Cox is 2 out of every 3 automotive transactions in the United States come through a Cox business. So there are all of these secondary markets that Cox needs to play a part in, and as those recycling markets, again, in the spirit of transparency, as plastic recycling solutions ebb and flow, we are trying to solve for materials that are important to us. So one example that I'm really excited about, and again, I'm happy that John and Tony are here to back me up on failure, is, it's still a learning opportunity, but it's trying to solve for something that folks don't think about, like bumpers. So Cox is really committed to developing partnerships with organizations that invest and develop innovations to scale some of these solutions and transform into circular supply chains. So we are looking at pilots to where can we be an aggregator with other folks in this business that maybe actually don't even have any sustainability goals, but if we can bring some scale to some of these difficult to recycle solutions, there might be an opportunity there for us.
All right. So again, it's being aware of an issue, leading by change within your own organizations, but it's inspiring others through your supply chain, through your partnering, working with nonprofits, being willing to experiment. But of course, there's going to be challenges. And so 30-second round on challenges before we bring in Jacqueline, bring Jacqueline back with the questions from the community. What is the biggest challenge, piece of advice, thing that you would change if you could in the recycling space? Meredith, you want to start?
Sure. So I would say for us, the biggest challenge is scalability. We, as a non-manufacturer, we have a little bit of everything spread across something like 46 states. So a lot more similar to what some of the affiliates might be facing is how do we get scale, and how do we not only get that scale, but educate people on how we want them to solve for that when the market is a little patchy and disparate across the United States. So material aggregation would be the biggest thing that I would change.
Fabulous. John?
All right, so something very similar to Meredith, but kind of from a different angle. And I'm going to go back to environmental intersectionality again. Really kind of this really decentralized model of recycling infrastructure is really difficult for us. Think about your own neighborhood, how often you recycle. Does the recycler come once a week, twice a week, or once a month? Like, what is that? And kind of the disproportionate effect that it has on communities. That actually brings a really big challenge to us in terms of actually getting enough materials for recycled content, but then also really helps to give us a big challenge on our model of return on responsibility and how that impacts it.
From my end, two very quick ones. I think one of the biggest challenges with recycling is it is very fragmented and it can be very confusing. I don't have the answer, but it's hard. How do we kind of stop wish cycling, which happens quite a bit? And then the second, and probably a very obvious one, sustainability is expensive. It's not a cheap endeavor. There's a reason why it takes time to do these things. It is hard, it is expensive, but I think value is being shown every day, and that's allowing us to get over that hurdle.
And for me, I'll share really briefly until Jacqueline joins us, but for me, it's a matter of focus. Do we focus on the one tree falling in the forest, or do we focus on the 1,000 different trees that are silently growing? And then how is it that we might be able to multiply those particular efforts? But Jacqueline, questions?
Questions, real quick. I'll jump in. I'm going to try to get 2 or 3 in. One in from the audience. How do we convey the importance of zero waste, recycling, and smart, sustainable decisions with our own organizations, our own communities, and with consumers? And because we're short on time, I'm going to smush a second one in there, which is related. What might be the best way for a business to motivate consumers to support and spend more for green initiatives? So they're looking for tools and ideas. Why don't we start with you, Meredith?
So I think for tools, the best thing you can do is finding out what is meaningful to who you're talking to. And I think one of the things that makes zero waste such an exciting area to work in is they can hold that in their hand and identify with something that you're talking about. So identify your audience and figure out what that thing is that's going to bring this home to them, whether that is what can they do with a yogurt cup, or my favorite question, so you throw this away, well, where is away? Raise your hand if you know where away is. Getting them to think about it doesn't just go in the curb and go somewhere, but making that message relatable to them, especially in a corporate setting, finding something that they interact with every day in a corporation and say, well, where do you think that goes? So find something in your community or in your business that is really relatable across your businesses. And if you have multiple businesses like me, you've got to have a couple different playbooks based on your audience. And I think about how you might get more of your, so for me, my internal folks that I am trying to communicate with and get them to buy in, it's really thinking about closing that loop again between, it's not just what you do at work, it's what you do at home, and that you can really amplify what you're learning in both of those spaces, work and home, and help them see that they're part of those 1,000 trees that are growing, Jennifer, that this is really a long-term view, but something that, especially for waste, they can see immediate results. My recycling bin is filling up faster than my trash bin, things like that. So I think setting that up for them so that people can realize near-term and long-term success is really the key.
Thanks, Meredith. John?
Yeah. So I think depending on who your stakeholder is, it's again redefining that value proposition. So if it is a business, a business colleague, you may have to talk about that return on investment. If it's a consumer, you may have to actually talk about, if they gravitate towards, doing good, then that's what you do. When it comes to the overall like engaging consumers, I think the biggest thing is about the experience. So I kind of think about it in 3 different ways. First and foremost, it needs to be simple and easy. If you can't explain it in less than 30 seconds, it's not simple and it's not easy. The second thing is there has to be that reward element to it. Consumers are looking for that feel-good dopamine effect, so it needs to include that. And the third thing is it has to be tangible and personable. So, one of the big obstacles I always face with consumer experiences is, am I talking into this kind of nebulous space, or is it something that they can actually feel, envision, which goes back to that simplification. So, simple, reward, and tangible.
Thank you, John. Tony?
Yeah, simple and clear is my big one as well. Like I said earlier, there's so much confusion around recyclability. So I don't want to steal that from John because he said it well. I think when it comes to making a difference internally, the biggest change that I've seen in a decade at Terracycle is when I started, I used to speak to a green team, which was 5 people who were just passionate, and no matter what their roles are, they kind of met in dark corners in their organizations to think of ways to be better as corporate citizens. And kudos to those people who made a lot happen with probably no budget. But what's great now is no matter who I speak to, if it's a salesperson, a marketer, or somebody in operations, customer service, sustainability is part of their remit. And I think that's amazing. So no matter who you are within your organization, I think you have a responsibility and you have it as part of your job to think about how this is going to be good for the environment. And if you have good ideas, I hope you have channels to give those good ideas to the people who can help make an impact and action those ideas.
Perfect. Thank you, Tony. So one more question, 1 minute for each of you. How do your commitments to zero waste incorporate equity into their transformative impact? And how might corporations measure it? Why don't we go backwards and start with you, Tony, again.
For us, again, I think everybody within Terracycle's walls is there to make a difference. It's part of our performance reviews as a company, and part of your job is to always be thinking about kind of zero waste. So I think that's why a lot of people come to Terracycle. We want to reward people who kind of push that mantra throughout the company.
Great. Thank you. John.
Okay, so low key, I didn't mention this, but I'm also co-diversity officer for the organization. But so when it really comes to equity, like what do we actually mean by that? I think the biggest thing is leveling the playing field. So I mentioned kind of this decentralized recycling, particularly in that space of the infrastructure. Like the big thing is the playing field is not level. We see this through the communities and the disproportionate effect that the environment has on communities. And so I think the biggest thing is a revolution has many lanes. There's something for everyone. And we as an organization really need to look at what is our role to play here. Some organizations donate, some organizations lobby, some organizations do something in between there. But the biggest thing is finding that niche space that's right for you and making sure that you're driving towards that even playing field.
Thank you. That's great. Meredith.
And for us, with our new focus on looking outwards towards communities, we are really committed to ensuring that everyone at Cox and everyone that is in the Cox sphere has the same level of access to that infrastructure and knowledge, whether that's technical knowledge, whether that's a bin, whether that's educational resources. And so we really want to make sure, not only at Cox, because Cox is in so many communities, but we definitely acknowledge first and foremost that not all of the communities are the same. And that's a big part of translating and looking out for Cox is what can we do? How can we make sure that everyone has this? Because one thing that I didn't mention is 92% of our locations have some type of recycling. And a couple of years ago, it became very apparent that we are not going to move that last 8% as Cox alone. And so that we really need to be a part of the change that we want to see in the infrastructure and in the curbside and in communities, so that Cox customers and then friends and family in our communities can access those same things. So helps us, but also helps the broader zero waste infrastructure in the US.
Thank you. Jennifer, did you want to comment on either of those questions before I close this out?
The only comment I would make is just to double down on everything that's already been said, that there's, let 1,000 flowers bloom within that forest of 1,000, but it's also the idea that no resources to waste whatsoever, whether it's time, treasury, talent, infrastructure, material, whatever it is, use it, reuse it, recycle it. And some of the different stories that are going on here shows me why. Edelman Trust Barometer, for example, came out in 2021 and said that business is now seen as the only institution that's both competent and ethical. So it's putting that integrity in action. Yes, there's going to be failures, but on the road and on the road together. So I'm pretty excited. Thank you all. Jacqueline?
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. As we close the conversation today, I would really like to thank everyone on the call for joining this portion of the Keep America Beautiful Zero Waste webinar series. I'd also really like to extend a special thank you to our host and panelists for taking really precious time out of your busy schedules to lead this vital discussion. We're very grateful to you. Thank you. Achieving zero waste and creating a circular economy and a more sustainable future can be advanced when we all take action in our various roles as individuals and join our neighbors to truly deliver change. Keep America Beautiful at our core is about helping people find common purpose and inspiring them to take action to clean, green, and beautify their communities. In just 2 days, the Keep America Beautiful Great American Cleanup will kick off and extend throughout June. In addition, Keep America Beautiful programs and education initiatives will take place throughout the year. You can find these and many other opportunities to take action in your community by visiting us at kab.org. That's kab.org. There you will also see our volunteer portal to help you connect with your local Keep America Beautiful affiliate. So please take a moment now, if you've got a few minutes before your next meeting, and explore the Keep America Beautiful website. You can discover how simple and fun it is to truly be part of making change. And thank you again for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day.